Good morning, you're watching One News Markets. I'm Danny Laurel. Before we delve into the equity space, here are the top stories of the hour. The Trade Department says the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or the RCEP, may take effect as early as May. Now that the free trade deal has been ratified by the Senate, the next step is to deposit the instrument of ratification to the ASEAN Secretary General. That's according to RCEP lead negotiator and Trade Assistant Secretary Alan Gepti. He says that 60 days after receipt of the instrument of ratification, the RCEP agreement will officially take effect in the Philippines. Gepti also says an executive order containing the schedule of the Philippines' tariff commitments will be drafted and will be submitted to the palace for President Bongbong Marcos' signature. The EO will be the basis for the tariff implementation under the RCEP. Now, Oxford Economics expects Philippine economic growth to slow to 4.1% this year. That's from the 7.6% expansion recorded in 2022. Oxford Economics says the projected slowdown is due to global headwinds and elevated inflation, which are seen to dampen domestic demand. The think tank also said that with monetary tightening set to continue, the economy could, quote, use a hand from the fiscal side, but chances are slim. Oxford Economics' GDP projection is well below the government's target of 6 to 7% for 2023. Now, for next year, Oxford Economics expects an expansion of 4.5%. That's also below the 6.5 to 8% target set by the government. Starlink is now live in the Philippines. The company made this announcement via Twitter. Along the tweet is a link to the order form for Starlink services. In Mandaluyong and other cities in Metro Manila, the satellite dish is worth 29,320 pesos, while the monthly service fee is priced at 2,700 pesos. SpaceX had earlier partnered with Philippine data company Data Link Incorporated for the distribution of Starlink services in the country. Starlink deploys low-orbit satellites to establish an internet connection, which is said to reach even remote locations. And this from Bloomberg, Maya is looking to raise about $150 million from investors to boost its growth. People familiar with the matter said the PLDT-backed fintech firm is working with financial advisors in a fundraising that could bring its valuation closer to about $2 billion. They also said a new funding round could help pave the way toward a potential IPO for Maya. Maya has drawn preliminary interest from prospective investors, including existing backers, according to Bloomberg. Well, the telcos don't stop, and here to chat with us about how to value them, we have with us Manny Ocampo of ICCP. Good morning, Sir Manny, and welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, morning, Danny. Morning, everyone.
All right, sir, let's kick off with the telco space now. You've got Starlink, $599 plus $99 a month. Let's kick off with that. Is that big news for this industry? And which ones do you see, which stocks do you see moving on the back of this?
Well, it's not very clear who Starlink is affiliating with as far as the local telcos, if any. But it's a very specialized service that Starlink will be providing. I think, given the cost, it'll be, it's a service, it's a telecom service that will be best applied in the remote areas, not traditionally covered by your telco companies. And they're quite still a bit in the Philippines. Just maybe on the corporates, the mining companies, for example, out there in the boondocks doing their exploration work that need to be connected, that they will be heavy users of this one, of course.
Well, previous to this announcement, there were talks between Converge and Elon Musk's companies on them bringing in this technology. Has that been, let's say, valued or taken out of the value of Converge, given that it's now here? Let's say, it doesn't seem to be connected to Converge at the moment.
No, it's Starlink seems to be running independent, and we know there are quite a few subscribers already to the service that have been maybe early. They took on the service very early on. More a need. So Starlink service, the way I understand it, is coming out cheaper than the sat phone services, for example, of the existing telcos. So that's one. So maybe it prompts a question mark whether the existing telcos need to revisit pricing on their own satellite communication services.
Okay, sir, shifting over to the fintech side of our two incumbent telco players, no, to what extent, how can we compare the prices and figure out the value of, for instance, Tencent coming back into Maya, valuation of $2 billion, is that priced into the TEL stock or the PLDT stock?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Otherwise,
It would be valuation.
And in much the same way that Mint, for example, the full impact of Mint GCash is, it's not quite reflected in Globe's own valuation. I guess these companies have to go public to establish a real market value that get priced into their parent companies.
Okay, and what's your view on them doing an IPO? No, that's what Bloomberg is reporting, and you've also got GCash having touted that. Even the president of the board had mentioned GCash kept wanting, showing interest in an IPO. How important would that be, and would that be competing then with the banking space, or which kind of stocks would you be looking at should a Maya or a GCash come into the public space?
Well, Maya is already on the digital bank space, so that will, and we think that the digital banks will come out of their own when they're, shall we say, they're mature enough. There is a 3-year operating track record requirement of the PSC as far as operations are concerned, profitability is concerned. So a lot of these, let's call them unicorns, still need to meet those traditional requirements of the exchange to go public, at least here in the Philippines.
So interesting point there, no? That's not something that can happen right away. They do need a track record if they're going to be competing with that. Speaking, sir, of the banks, we did get Metrobank earnings. This, of course, comes on the heels of BPI and BDO earnings. For the fourth quarter, though, for the full year 2022, that was up 48%, but they actually missed the Bloomberg consensus. And for the fourth quarter, they also missed the net income estimates. Give us an idea here of your reaction to the Metrobank earnings and what this says about the industry.
Well, nominally it looks strong, but I think the industry is very competitive. Some banks are really just, shall we say, have better legs as far as operating in this competitive environment is concerned.
Okay.
There were higher expectations, I think, for Metrobank, so that's falling a little bit short. I think market reaction has been neutral for the meantime.
Okay, so
on that news. So,
yeah, can you compare this a little bit? The big banks, the top three, BPI, BDO, Metrobank, in this environment of high interest rates and possibly softer loan growth versus the second-tier banks that are more digitalized. What's the standing of these?
Well, okay, the big banks against the newer digital banks. Maybe let's do that comparison.
Correct.
Overhead is one thing. The latter will maybe have a lot less of given the delivery of their services. No? So, they don't have the legacy expenses of branches, people, etc. So the digital banks should be able to execute a lot better on their on their business model. For example, the ability to deliver it mobile is another advantage of the digital banks. Now, having said that, the biggest, maybe the biggest thing that the digital banks still have to address would be the ability for their customers to actually get cash, without having to have that friction cost of having to pay the ATM withdrawal expenses, being charged.
Mahal pa rin, yes. Okay.
But otherwise, anything else you can do on digital banks. You can borrow, you can pay your bills, and it's very efficient, very effective, and my understanding, quite secure compared to the traditional banks that have legacy systems that they're maybe trying to change over, to better, more adept systems under the current environment.
Sir, to what extent are you worried that the rising interest rates and the Fed just came out with their meeting with even more hawkish outlook? People thought that would be over, and the impact on the loan growth, especially to year to date, we see the financial space finally recovering after a couple of years having such difficulty, but we're quite far still from the pre-pandemic levels here. But tell us, are you worried about that finally eating into loan growth and even to the margins?
Loans. No, I think loans will continue to grow. The thing right now, Danny, is that traditionally corporates will source either debt or equity to be able to execute their expansion plans. Equity may be a bit tricky to raise these days, or maybe if they do raise it, they'll have to give up valuation on that one. So banks are, a lot of the corporates are still looking to raise funds through fixed income securities. Bond offerings will still be there. In fact, it was a it was a great year last year, and by all indications, fixed income issuances, bond issuances by corporates will still continue for this year.
Okay, so still on expansionary mode and still people need to borrow money for expansion plans. Finally, sir, let's close off with the index levels dropping close to 6,600 levels here. What does that tell you in terms of the initial, reaction in the markets in the first part of the year? There was supposed to be, or some part to a certain effect, a bull run. Now we seem to be correcting. Is this fundamentally linked to the domestic economy and the things coming out on inflation and growth expectations, or is this just knee-jerk reactions to the Fed and the policies?
Well, the reaction to Fed will always be there, Danny. But I think let's call it a disappointment that inflation remains to be what people were expecting to be pretty much held in rein is actually not yet happening. No? So I think people are postponing maybe outlook for shall we say, better times, or an addressing of the inflation matter maybe in the second half, maybe later part of this year, rather than second quarter, as what maybe a lot of people were initially looking at or hoping for.
Are you seeing a support level, sir?
That will remain to be an overhang for the market.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any support level here, sir, at the moment that you're seeing?
6,500, which is very near. And, unfortunately, if we break 65, what you're looking at 6,200 as the next support level.
All right, so some downside risks here as we open the markets on the back foot, down by 0.5%. Thank you so much for those insights, Manny Ocampo of ICCP. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Danny.
And for more updates, visit News 5, the Philippine Star and Business World online, or visit our website, that's onenews.ph. For more in-depth analysis, you can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now. That's at www.signalplay.com, and stream One News Live anytime, anywhere. I'm Danny Laurel. Join us again at 11:15 a.m. We are One News, all sides, all the time.